What happens if African countries stay under the influence of the West? Well, everyone knows the results where after decades of independence, African countries are still grappling with poverty, food, energy, and healthcare crises. But Niger has made the world see what will happen if African countries distance themselves from the West. Shocking the entire world, especially the West, Niger has now become the fourth fastest growing economy in the world. It did this within just 3 months since the coup, leaving France totally shocked. Not only Niger but Burkina Faso also joined the list of the fastest growing economies, ranking 9th in the world. But how did they do it? What unique did they do that allowed Niger and Burkina Faso to skyrocket their economies within just months, compared to decades before them? Let's know about that in this video. In 2023, Qatar became the fastest-growing economy in the world due to its vast oil reserves, followed by Saudi Arabia due to the same reason. India was in 3rd position, followed by China in 4th, Thailand in 5th, and Japan in 6th position. But that's the economic growth for 2023. What about 2024, and what do IMF and other financial institutions say about that? Well, it's quite a big achievement that 2024 is the year for African economies. Since we have seen a wave of coups in Africa, they have started showing their positive results. According to the latest economic growth outlook, 7 African countries are among the top 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Yes, that's what African countries have achieved within just months. From number 4 to number 10, we see 7 African countries on the list, shocking the world. Niger is rich in precious natural resources, but until now, these resources were exploited only by France. By plundering these resources worth hundreds of billions of dollars, France would offer minimal amounts, enough to keep Niger running in the worst possible conditions. All the mining companies working in Niger were foreign, ensuring that only they and their home countries make a profit, offering pennies to Niger. You should know that Niger is a producer of diverse mineral commodities, such as cement, coal, gold, gypsum, limestone, salt, silver, tin, and uranium. In 2006, the country stood as the 4th largest global producer of uranium. The introduction of a new mining code in August 2006 led to the establishment of 2 entities, the Geological and Mining Research Center and the Mining Company of Niger. Since the adoption of the new mining code, the government has issued numerous permits for mineral exploration, which often go to foreign companies. Joining the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative in 2005, Niger formed a national consultative committee in late 2006 to improve transparency, including public representatives. The initial audit report reconciling revenue from mining companies with government receipts was slated for late 2007. Regarding the national economy, Niger's mineral sector contributes around 3% to the GDP and represents approximately 40% of the total exports. The International Monetary Fund notes that the growing interest in nuclear energy has boosted uranium demand, leading to investments in existing mines and increased exploration. But despite having uranium, the element that powers the future and is a major input of the Green Revolution, Niger is one of the poorest nations. Notably, the prominent French company Areva invested $1.4 billion in the sector from 2008 to 2012, aiming to double the country's uranium production capacity. But this doubling meant benefits for only France, keeping the situation in Niger the same. You should know that Niger plays a significant role in the global uranium market, contributing approximately 5% to the total uranium output and providing Africa with high-quality uranium ore. In 2022, the country produced 2,020 tons of uranium, marking a decrease from 2,991 tons in 2020 and 4,921 tons in 2012. Since the 1950s, Niger has been recognized for its substantial uranium deposits located in the desert north of the Agadez region, approximately 1,000 kilometers northeast of Niamey. The initial mine opened in 1971 outside Arlit, operated by Somar, a national company jointly owned by Areva and the government of Niger. Areva holds a 63.4% stake, while the government of Niger owns 36.6%, and the mine employed about 600 individuals. From 1978 to 2021, The Cominac uranium mining project in Akokan near Arlit, similar to Somer, produced 75,000 tons of uranium. Major stakeholders in Cominac include Areva NC, Overseas Uranium Resources Development Company of Japan, and Inusa Industrias Avanzadas, SA of Spain. The Akokan underground mine became the world's largest of its kind, contributing to an economic upturn in Niger during the 1970s due to soaring uranium prices. Uranium ore extracted in the Arlit area is processed as triuranium octoxide. In 2011, the Somer mine held uranium reserves of 14,000 tons with an annual production capacity of 2,700 tons. The Cominac concession totaled 29,000 tons with an annual production capacity of 2,500 tons. Concerning coal mining, Niger's history dates back to 1968 with the discovery of coal reserves in Anu Araran. This led to the establishment of Sonachar in 1975, aiming to mine coal for thermal power plants supplying energy to uranium mining activities. While coal mining projects experienced a standstill, construction for a second coal mine began in Salkadamna, Takanamat, Tahua region in 2014. This mine is intended to supply a $600 million power plant and a coal briquette plant adjacent to the mine. The estimated coal reserves at Anu Araran are 15 million tons, with 246,016 tons, extracted in 2011. While the Salkadamna reserves are estimated at 70 million tons. Gold deposits with exploitable potential have been known to exist in the southwestern region of Niger for an extended period, and more recently, discoveries have been made in the northern region of Agadez. Artisanal gold mining was already practiced between the Niger River and the border with Burkina Faso. In 2004, the Samira Hill gold mine, operated by the mining company of Liptako, began production. The mining company of Liptako is jointly owned by two Canadian companies, each holding 40%, and the government of Niger, which owns 20%. You see, 80% of gold mines are held by foreign companies, leaving only a minimal profit for the government of Niger. Gold production from this mine was 1,564 kilos in 2011 but has steadily decreased since 2008. In 2014, two gold deposits were discovered in the Agadez region, located 700 and 360 kilometers from Agadez City, respectively. The Jado site, found in April 2014, triggered a gold rush that attracted local inhabitants of Agadez and prospectors from neighboring countries like Chad, Sudan, and Burkina Faso. Activities at the Jado site were temporarily halted to organize exploration and artisanal extraction activities, improve infrastructure, particularly water supply, and enhance security presence. The site near Mount Ibel was discovered in September 2014, and all prospectors require exploration permits before accessing these sites. The same is true for Burkina Faso, which has rich reserves of gold, zinc, copper, manganese, phosphate, and limestone. It also possesses reserves of diamonds, bauxite, nickel, and vanadium, although these resources remain largely untapped. Despite the extractive sector contributing only 8% to government revenues, it played a substantial role, contributing to 75% of exports in 2019. The mining sector in Burkina Faso has experienced growth due to increased investment and the gradual establishment of industrial mines. This sector has been a key player in Burkina Faso's National Development Plan, resulting in a rise in gold production from 38.5 tons in 2016 to 50.5 tons in 2019. But little did this increase play any role in making Burkina Faso prosperous. Such was the condition that the government of Burkina Faso had to buy gold from foreign companies for reserves. Yes, gold residing in Burkina Faso's land was bought from foreign companies, as if that were their property. But now, within 3 months of a coup and the expulsion of France, Niger is poised to be the fourth fastest-growing economy globally by 2024, as per projections from the World Economic Outlook. Moreover, Niger is anticipated to be the fastest-growing economy in Africa. This growth outlook is due to the radical changes being made in Niger. Until now, the government has been working to renegotiate the agreements with foreign companies and increase government stakes in mines. Nationalizing natural resources in Niger centers on the notion that by assuming control of these resources, the country can ensure that the benefits and profits arising from their exploitation directly contribute to the prosperity of Niger, rather than primarily enriching foreign companies. Nationalization aims to reduce dependence on foreign entities and establish economic independence. By controlling its natural resources, Niger can exert a more direct influence on the management, pricing, and distribution of these resources. In this way, wealth can be redistributed within the country. Instead of profits flowing primarily to foreign shareholders, nationalization allows the government to allocate revenue for public services, infrastructure development, education, healthcare, and poverty reduction. It will also ensure that a larger share of the revenue generated from the exploitation of natural resources stays within the country. This can be achieved by negotiating more favorable terms, such as higher royalty rates and taxes on resource extraction. With nationalization, there is often an expectation that more jobs will be created for the local population. This can include opportunities in resource extraction, processing, and related industries, contributing to economic development and reducing unemployment. Nationalization allows the government to have greater control over the strategic planning and long-term development of the natural resources sector. This includes decisions about when and how resources should be extracted, processed, and sold on the global market. Now, as plans for proper planning are being discussed in Niger, as said by the Prime Minister, the economic outlook has automatically changed. When the Niger Prime Minister was asked about the aid cut from the Western countries to Niger, he said that his country is rich in resources and knows how to manage it. This hinted at the strategy being formulated in the government. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Turning our attention to Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso is forecasted to be the 9th fastest growing economy in the world by 2024 and the 6th fastest growing economy in Africa. While there are other African countries making strides, such as Libya despite being in a state of war, we have to see Niger and Burkina Faso. It's because Libya was already included in the fastest growing economies list in 2023, so that's not extraordinary. However, both Niger and Burkina Faso were nowhere to be seen in the fastest growing economies list before. That means that the coups in these countries became the very reason for the spectacular economic outlook. When Niger increased the price of uranium from 0.80 euros per kilogram to $200 per kilogram immediately after expelling France, critics were skeptical. Now, the situation has reversed. French companies were selling Niger's uranium at 200 euros per kilogram and only giving 11 euros to Niger. Niger was accepting this because of the long-term agreements its former leaders did, caring about their personal interests. But now, Niger increased the price of uranium, making it equal to the international market price. If anyone wants to buy uranium, it has to pay 200 euros per kilogram as it pays to France. Niger became the first country to show how things should be done. By this, we can now understand why France and the West were so anxious about Niger. They tried everything they could to reverse the coup because they knew if the military junta became strong and made radical changes, it would mean an end to French exploitation. Now, that nightmare has become a reality. Even when African leaders engage in unpatriotic acts by stealing from Africa and investing in Europe, the continent is still ascending. It's both an indictment and affirmation of their incompetence and incapacity. As one African minister stated, when African leaders invest elsewhere other than Africa, it raises questions about their competence. Now, people are studying why such a radical change could not happen in Niger and any other African country before. Well, that's because Africans never felt united and stood against exploitation the way they did now. However, there is still a need for a cultural revolution. Africa witnessed 200 coups between 1965 and 2012, with at least one coup every 60 days in the 1960s. By the 1970s, barely 18 years after Ghana's independence, at least 85% of African states had undergone some form of coup. But none of these coups brought the fantastic results we are seeing in Africa now. That's because those coups were for the exact opposite purposes: to dethrone the leaders planning to distance themselves from the West. We saw this throughout the Cold War when the ideological rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union spilled onto the African continent. African nations frequently found themselves as pawns in the strategic games of the superpowers. Western nations, apprehensive about the spread of communism, were inclined to support regimes aligning with their interests, even if it meant undermining democratically elected leaders. This dynamic unfolded in various African nations, contributing to political instability. The economic interests of Western nations in Africa have been substantial. The continent's abundant resources, spanning from minerals to oil, have positioned it as a focal point for economic exploitation. In instances where African leaders aim to nationalize resources or negotiate for improved terms, they often encountered opposition from Western powers. This opposition occasionally took the form of supporting coups to install leaders more conducive to Western economic interests. Colonialism also became a factor in this. Many African nations achieved independence with artificial borders, tribal divisions, and fragile institutions. This laid the groundwork for an environment prone to political instability. Western countries, having played a role in shaping post-colonial realities, were at times implicated in the ensuing turmoil. Critics contend that Western intervention has been selective, frequently favoring leaders who served Western interests over those pursuing more independent or nationalist agendas. This selectivity could be construed as a deliberate effort to forestall the emergence of robust, independent African nations that might challenge Western dominance. But now, we are seeing coups that are beneficial for the country. In other words, these coup leaders are dethroning the civilian leaders who were being used as puppets by the West. Now, coups in Africa aim to oust leaders perceived as Western puppets, exclusively safeguarding Western interests. Numerous African nations have a colonial history, during which Western powers wielded substantial influence. In the post-independence era, some leaders faced accusations of maintaining close ties with former colonial powers and adopting policies favoring Western economic interests. In instances where leaders were perceived as compromising national sovereignty for Western gains, internal and external pressures could emerge to remove them. Certain leaders in Africa have prioritized Western economic interests over the development and well-being of their own nations. This may involve agreements favoring foreign corporations, permitting the exploitation of natural resources to the detriment of local populations. In response, the coup have overthrown these corrupt leaders, prioritizing national development and rejecting external interests. Coups often follow widespread dissatisfaction among the population. However, if a leader is viewed as primarily serving Western interests, neglecting the needs of the people, it can create fertile ground for internal opposition. In such cases, the narrative of removing a leader perceived as a Western puppet may gain traction among the public. We have already seen this manifesting in Niger and Burkina Faso, where the public is ready to sacrifice and endure sanctions for the long-term autonomy and independence of their countries. Now, the projection indicates that Niger's real GDP is poised to grow by 7.0% in 2023 and 11.8% in 2024, with all sectors experiencing growth of at least 5%. The expected upswing in GDP growth is ascribed to heightened consumption, increased investment in oil, and improved exports facilitated by the new pipeline. Inflation is expected to be kept below the target of 3%, and initiatives are in progress to consolidate public finances. A substantial increase in public revenue from oil production is anticipated, accompanied by an improvement in the quality of public spending, courtesy of the implementation of the new public finance reform strategy. Projections indicate that public debt will remain sustainable, with a significant portion of external borrowing secured on concessional terms. The outlook also points towards a reduction in both the current account and trade deficits. The anticipated enhancement in social conditions is attributed to a combination of factors, including economic recovery and resilience-building measures outlined in the new Economic and Social Development Plan for the years 2022-2026. All this is possible due to Niger's military junta that has brought the country back on track. Earlier, uranium was being offered to France and other countries at the lowest possible prices, with little room to renegotiate the agreements. But now, Niger's military junta has taken the control in its hand. Despite being hit hard by sanctions, facing the worst food, energy, and healthcare crises, Niger's economic outlook is phenomenal. That's because from this moment on, all revenues are going to stay inside the country instead of being allowed to exit and get invested in foreign countries. Renegotiating agreements can give Niger's military immense power to decide the taxes on the foreign companies, besides buying a majority of shares back. Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré has already made such a strategy. He is establishing a grand state-owned company that will oversee all the mining operations in the country. This company will ensure that all resources, especially the gold, stay within the country instead of being exported. In other words, if French and Canadian companies mined gold and exported it, from now on, they would be directed to either buy at the international market prices or hand the gold over to Burkina Faso. All blatantly unfair agreements would be renegotiated to ensure that Burkina Faso pockets the majority of benefits in all mining operations. Due to the comprehensive plans that Niger and Burkina Faso have made, their economic outlook has been improved extraordinarily. However, imagine what will happen near 2024 when all these strategies will be in action and these countries will be attracting foreign investments. All this will ensure that whatever is mined stays in the country or is sold at fair prices. Do you think that Niger and Burkina Faso have shown African countries their real potential if they become truly independent? Isn't it true that this spectacular economic growth will encourage more coups in Africa and the West will lose all influence that it has left? Let us know your thoughts on the future of African countries' economies if this trend continues. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.